Hello, my name is Shamus Burnside Savazzini, and I am the Director of Children's Faith Formation at Grace United Methodist Church, Naperville, Illinois. Grace United Methodist Church has a history of serving through missions. Grace has truly been a pillar for continued faithful mission service locally, nationally, and internationally. We have been the hands and feet of Jesus through many ongoing, consistent ministry efforts, as well as shorter, immediate response missions. As Christians, we are called to care for others and to put our faith into action and train up our children to do the same. Collectively, it's a blessing to be a part of and witness the church reaching out to the community. James 2:14-18 states, "What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save them? Suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to them, 'Go in peace, keep warm and well fed,' but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. But someone will say, 'You have faith, I have deeds. Show me your faith without deeds, and I will show you my faith by my deeds.'" So, with that in mind, Lara Stanton and I will share our personal experience as well as our supported experience through Grace Church, which are, of course, only as small as a mustard seed compared to what Grace has always been doing and continues to do. We are thankful to have the opportunity to share with you.
Hi, my name is Laura Stanton, and I'm delighted to be sharing with you today my mission experience, that journey that kind of led from where I started to the passion that I feel for that today. I started like a lot of people. I participated in our church programs, such as donating school supplies for kids and food pantry items and donating items to garage sale to fund women's programs. But it wasn't really until I took my first trip in 2015 to South Africa that I began to see that there was this connection to faith that I was missing. To be inspired by the people there who really lived in poverty that you can't even fathom until you actually see it in person. It's one thing to see the pictures, but when you see human beings among these tin shacks with dirt floors, it's overwhelming to want to help in so many ways, and there's so many ways that they need help and only be able to do so little and make an impact. To see these women come and want to learn how to teach Sunday school and share stories of the Bible and just break out into song just really is inspiring, as how much faith they had and working alongside them. So that's really where I started to understand that there's a deep connection between faith and what I was doing, and how that was the hands and feet of God versus just being a helpful community participant. My roommate, Charmel, was great in helping me in that journey, and she kind of kicked me off when, I dissolved in tears one day because we didn't have enough food for everybody that came to Vacation Bible School, and running around collecting granola bars and pretzels and apples and having to break a granola bar in half to divide it between two children so they had something to eat was just an experience that was hard for me to process when I came home to Naperville, and just knew I had so much I could share, and what else I could do to make an impact, and how, because I had been given so much, it really was my responsibility and expected of me to take that approach and give back in the way I could. And it was not only that, it was also walking with God in doing so. The Philippines was a new experience for me. Again, we did a lot of feedings out in the community, and I was a little more ready to see the poverty this time. And we were supposed to build a playground, but because of the politics and the government in place and the corruption, they would not release our playground to be built at this academy. I really was kind of at a loss what to do, since I was there for a purpose that could no longer be fulfilled. I remember the director asking me, what did I do for a living? And I'm thinking, I'm a CPA. I'm not a teacher. There's not really a good way I can contribute to helping these kids. And he lit up and said, "I need help in our accounting office. We don't properly account for our income expense. Our funders ask for information on how we're spending the money, and we don't really track that in a good way, and I'm not tracking cash correctly. So to be able to use the gifts that I had in a way that I never expected was just a gift from God. And amazing that he actually gave me talents that he knew and placed me in the position where I could help. He also asked what I like to do in my free time, which is cooking and baking is one of my hobbies. And he said, again, that's great because I really need some American dishes to teach the ladies in the kitchen so that when we have visitors and volunteers that come from the US, we try to mix it up between American dishes and Filipino dishes. And that would really help to teach them, which I did. So it was also a humbling, eye-opening experience to remember that I was giving specific gifts for a purpose and that those would be revealed to me and that I didn't necessarily have to have the same skills as somebody else in teaching or leading prayer, that I was there for a different purpose and I needed to just pray and find out what that was. So, funny enough, I had people that went on these mission trips with me, and they were returning to South Africa for a second year in a row. In the Philippines, we had one of our team members went back and she stayed there for a month, and they just felt such a connection that I just didn't. And I asked, I said, I have wanderlust. I love to travel and explore new places, and I can't imagine going back. As passionate as I felt about helping the people there and the connection I made and friendships that I formed, I can't imagine going back. And they just kind of smiled and said, you'll see, you're not called here. That's why. You'll see where your calling is. And that was Romania for me. So I first went in 2017 and we built a playground and installed a soccer field and cleaned up their volleyball court. And I fell in love with the country and the camp we were helping. It's there to introduce God to children. It's there to provide a camp for orphans in the area. And it was just an amazing experience in how that's where I felt like the faith and mission connection really occurred. And it was something that I just felt so passionate about that camp and the people I met. One of the pictures shows the man there who's the caretaker at the camp, and he literally has nothing, and he was spending time collecting clothes, washing them by hand, drying them in the sun for the children of Ukraine that needed them. He had a friend that would drive them over to Ukraine. I just thought it's amazing. Here's another example of somebody who just wants to give back. So I went to Romania 3 years in a row, and that was my connection. That's where I was called. That's where I felt God wanted me to go and continue to contribute to that camp and help. And I was able to do more construction projects one year in 18. And then in 19, I brought my daughter Jenna with me, and we ran an English camp, and she has a passion for arts and crafts. And so we had a great time coming up with crafts and sharing them with the kids in Romania and making that connection. And I even tried to learn the language a little bit so I could converse with the kids. And just an amazing story behind Camp Hope in Romania and the people that developed that camp and all their work that they had done there. There's local ministers that and the community, church community in general, that I've developed relationships with and just help to continue to grow there. And I hope to go back after this COVID madness ends. So that's my call to action. That's where my passion kind of connected. And I took my sons as well to Ecuador in 2017 because I wanted to also introduce them to the importance of helping others. And my husband has done several of these trips as well. So we're a family that travels and tries to help and give back because we're so grateful for the blessings that we have.
In October of 2019, I felt called to respond to Freeport, Grand Bahama in the wake of the devastation of Hurricane Dorian. When news had first broke about the devastation and just the disastrous situation that was happening there, immediately my heart felt moved to respond. I remember waking up the first night after getting the news and seeing preliminary photos, and my daughter stating, "Mom, we have to do something. We have to help those people." As soon as I got back to church the following Sunday, everyone was stopping and asking how my family was doing, had I heard, and made sure everybody was okay. And the next question was always, how can we help? Fast forward a few weeks in, I was sleeping one night and just could not sleep. I was tossing and turning. I just kept feeling this pull to respond, to do more, instead of just saying, oh, send a check here or send a check there, which would be my normal response. And I woke up the next morning and I talked to my husband and said, I need to go. I need to go to Freeport and I need to physically respond. So I called around and I got in contact with the superintendent of the Methodist Church of the Caribbeans and Americas. And he is over both of the islands that were devastated, Abaco and Freeport. So Reverend Kenneth Lewis is actually the one who I was able to get in touch with. And at the time, he was physically traveling to Florida to work with another church to bring things over, because a new piece of information I learned was that I could not just collect things and send them. I had to travel with the things because of immigration and customs. There were no flights. The airport was completely gone, and the only way you can get to the island was on a boat. So here I was, not truly understanding what it would take, but I knew I needed to respond. I could not shake the feeling of needing to respond. And with that, I had the encouragement and the voices and the action and the generosity of many of Grace members and friends. And I went to my disciple group. I am in the Thursday disciple class with Reverend Doug Bowden, and I shared my just the feel of being called, and I was affirmed in that group. And I remember coming home and praying, Lord, if this is for me to do, or if you really want me to do this, just show me the way. Show me the way. So as I spoke with Reverend Kenneth Lewis, he connected me with a church in Florida. So I went and I contacted that church, and she gave me dates when she would be there. And she said, we have lots of donations coming in, but the problem is we cannot ship the stuff because it costs money to ship each pallet. It was like $165 to $180 per pallet. So I thought to myself, well, if I can go down to Florida and I can get the things palletized, then I can get them shipped. I would be free to travel with them. Well, before going down to Florida, I connected with United Methodist Women, and there was a concern about sanitation and girls and women not having the right sanitary products, underwear, as well as socks and underwear for men also, because everything was wet. Everybody's stuff was destroyed, completely destroyed. So United Methodist Women also mobilized and started a collection and sent a shipment to an address that I had identified down in Florida, which was my cousin. So God was working through all of this, because I can't imagine how it really all came together in 3 to 4 weeks, which is kind of unheard of. But this is how I knew that the Holy Spirit was involved, and this was definitely not of my doing. So I flew down to Fort Lauderdale, and when I got there, I was overwhelmed because the amount of boxes that were waiting for me through Amazon shipments and personal shipments, I could not believe it. Fee Williams, through her Links organization, also sent a huge box of supplies. So it was so moving and touching that even though physically I didn't have a lot of people with me, I felt like the entire church was with me, because everybody was doing their part to make sure we responded to Freeport, Grand Bahama. So to say the least, I was all torn up the entire time emotionally, because I knew God was good, but to see it in action through people it was really moving that people would stop their lives, be so generous to make sure we can respond to Freeport, Grand Bahama. So once we got to Fort Lauderdale, I packed up everything that was at my cousin's house, because I didn't realize you had to actually go and palletize the shipment yourself. So there was a shipyard. There were people moving fast with forklifts and all this stuff. And I got there and I palletized everything that was in the van. And you'll see maybe one or two pictures of that. And I got everything into the van, got it to the shipyard, and realized the gentleman said, "Oh, we're open until 6 today. This is our long day." And I thought to myself, wow, I have time to do not one, but 2 trips to that church and pick up stuff. So we were able to bring 3 pallets worth of supplies and water and medical equipment and all that stuff to the shipyard to be palletized and shipped. We get on the ship the next day. We get down to Freeport. We got there. The boat left about 10 a.m. and you were supposed to get there at 12 noon. We got there. but we sat there until 5 p.m. trying to get the products cleared through customs. So long story short, we got one pallet and we were waiting two more pallets. So in the meantime, I was able to connect with Reverend Kenneth Lewis, the church. We were able to go and serve the school meals, breakfast, because a lot of the kids were coming to school, but they did not have food. So the church was preparing hot breakfast every day. And we also got to deliver some of the things that we had already bought. And one of those things were some medical equipment, like the bed pads for hospitals, and we took them to a Samaritan's Purse makeshift hospital that had already arrived and set up on the island. So when we got there, I was so moved because one of the helpers or employees said, "This is our last box, and you're bringing bed pads, and this was the last one I was using." So I see how God just moved in that. So, over and all, God was in the midst of it. And every step of the way, God sent people to help. I didn't know how it would happen. It just reminded me that that is how life is. We don't know how things are going to happen. But when you respond to God's call and you're obedient, He will make a way. So now that I think about, and we are thinking about, how does grace continue to move forward? How do we as individuals continue to follow our passion and follow our calling around mission? And for me personally, my hope is to continue to respond to the Bahamas, to assist. When you see an island where every house has been totally gutted, every building on Abaco has been destroyed almost, it makes you think this is not a one-shot deal. So I look forward to working with the superintendent, Reverend Kenneth Lewis, to see where the specific needs are, see where there are specific projects that possibly we could help with, and just see how can we continue to respond, how can I continue to respond. So that's what I'm hoping to do in the future, and I look forward to other opportunities.
I think the future of missions at Grace, there's so many people passionate like me and Shamus about doing projects such as the food pantry and supporting Hesed House, all the way up to coordinating a trip to the Bahamas. A lot of the team members I've met on these trips have got mission coordinators at church that kind of help coordinate some of the bigger projects. And I think we want to look towards supporting the smaller things and maybe pull together our resources and our time to put ourselves behind supporting a bigger project. Many times it's a church that supports a big project such as a playground build somewhere else in the world, where they use it also to introduce God to the children and community there who are really willing and wanting to learn, but just don't know where to get started. I also like that there's opportunities to do things like bring a bag of food and drop that at the church. Our ability to commit time, resources, changes day to day depending on what family obligations, work obligations we have. So it's nice to have both opportunities. I think our goal at Grace is to moving forward, is to supporting and communicating what each individual group is doing, looking for any overlap or coordination or any projects that we maybe want to get behind as a church community. So that's our hope and going forward. Hope to reach out to a lot of you and find out what you're doing and what you're passionate about and see what we can do to support you, communicate that out to the community, and see what we can do all together. Thanks for your time.
So now, May, Mission Kickoff Month, the question is, what is each person compelled to do? What have you spoken to God about? How is God calling you to respond in the midst of so many needs around the world, around our local area, in our city, in our state? What is God really calling us to do? The Great Commission tells us in Matthew, the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Then Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and teach them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age. Mission is just not for movement. Mission is just not for us to be in motion. Mission is really for us to make disciples of Jesus Christ. We are called to give back and to be a part of society so that we can share the gospel. As I prayed with the women and the volunteers at St. Paul's Methodist Church in Freeport, Grand Bahama, I was again emotional because I knew we were not only connected because of what I could do or bring to that island, we were connected through the Holy Spirit, through a heart connection. So at this point, I pray as a church, we continue to look for ways on how we can serve. Remember to stay filled up spiritually, because full things fill things. And the only way we can pour out our faith and pour out who we are as Christians is if we continue to stay filled up in Christ. So as we finish this segment, I am just so excited to see all that will happen at Grace and all that will continue to happen at Grace. And I am just so thankful that God has brought me to this place to be with this community so that I can continue to live my calling out and put faith over fear and put faith into action. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Gaylyn Lofek. I'm the Director of Youth Ministries at Grace United Methodist Church. Currently, we are all doing our part by sheltering in place. That's great. However, so many of us are feeling like we should be doing so much more. We want to help, but we don't know how. We know there are people who aren't able to stay at home right now. They have to go to work, and we are so grateful for them. There are also people who are hungry, lonely, experiencing homelessness, and so many other things that we can hardly imagine. We want to try to make a difference in the lives of these people. We want to let them know that we care about them, we're thinking about them. While it might seem impossible to make a difference while we are staying home, it's not. It's absolutely possible. As individuals, we can do a little. Together as a church, we can do so much more. We're inviting you to be part of Mission Possible, a weekly local mission allowing us to step out into our community in a safe way and be the hands and feet of Jesus. Each week, during the month of May, you will be given a mission, and should you choose to accept it, you will have the opportunity to participate in that mission with other Grace friends, sharing the love of Jesus through our actions. So watch for this logo. It will appear on our Grace website and in our worship announcements. If you are one of the many feeling like you should be doing so much more, while observing our shelter-in-place directive, simply click on the link and receive your mission. If possible, take pictures of your completed missions. We might want to use those in the future. We hope you'll join us. Together, we can make a difference.